I love living in Portugal, but some things definitely drive me crazy. In this video, I am breaking down the 5 things that I hate about living here. I've already shared the 5 things I love in a separate video, so if you missed that, please check it out after this. But if you're thinking of moving here, you need to hear this. Hi everybody, thank you so much for being here. I am Kimberly Ann, and I'm an expat who moved to Portugal from the United States. Okay, now I'm gonna go into the 5 things I don't love about living here. And please note that these are my experiences. And some of the things that I'm gonna now talk about are definitely controversial, absolutely. I have avoided for 3 years saying anything controversial, but I have started talking about some controversial issues on my Substack, and I've gotten a lot of pushback, and I've had to block a lot of people, but I think it's really important for people to know my experiences before you move here, or if you're considering moving here. And I've had more people that have been happy that I have talked about my experiences than people that have been angry about what I've talked about. So the first one is not controversial, and it is very well known. Number 1, most houses and apartments, not all, air conditioning or heating built in, nor do they have insulation. So it is oftentimes colder inside than it is outside during the winter. That does mean that it is often cooler in the summer inside and hotter outside, so that's a plus. I live in Porto, which is in the north, and for me, it gets quite cold in the winters. It gets down to about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, gets down to about 9-10 degrees Celsius. It gets lower than that, but during the day, it can be 9 degrees, and early in the morning, it can be 0 or 3 degrees. This is Celsius in the coldest part of the winter. For me, being a Californian, that is cold. Now, you can see that I am wearing a scarf inside, and it is not cold out right now. Right now, it is about 18 degrees out, which Celsius, which is pretty warm. But that, for me, is normal. Outside, I can wear what I'm wearing inside, outside, but inside, I'm actually cold. So I've got my heater on behind me, and I have to have a portable heater. I don't like the winters here. I don't like them at all. Matter of fact, I will say I hate them. And it is oftentimes raining. So that is another thing that I'm just gonna put in with this, but I hate the rain. One year it rained 10 months in Porto, but last year it rained about 6. And then we had 6 months of summer, which was amazing and not normal. Usually we have 2 or 3. So I'm just gonna say that. I'm throwing the rain and the not long summers in with the houses not having AC, heating, or insulation. So I really don't like that. That's probably my number 1 biggest gripe about living in Portugal. Okay, number 2 is the bureaucracy. It is brutal. So not only do things take a really long time, I'll give you an example. I applied for my driver's license here, which means I had to turn in my US driver's license. So I didn't have a driver's license, so I couldn't go back to the US and rent a car if I'd wanted to. And it took 9 months for them to send me my Portuguese driver's license. 9 months. I know one person, they've been here for 5 years and they're still waiting. And that's not typical, but it is very typical for it to take 9 months. And then my visa situation, which I will talk about because it's important. My residency card expired, temporary residency card, last December. And because there is a changeover in the agency from one agency to a new one, it's not working properly. Now it's starting to, but there was a backlog. I just had my appointment 2 months ago. I was waiting this whole time for my appointment. I was not here illegally. I had someone that flipped out thinking I was here illegally. No, we all had an extension, but we couldn't leave Portugal. I still can't because I won't be allowed back in, because my residency card has expired. But I am legally allowed to stay here. However, they don't know when I will get my new residency card. No one knows. No one knows at all. Some people are getting denied flat out, and they will have to leave Portugal. And I am just hoping that that will not happen, but I don't know if that will happen for me or not. I can appeal. I would have to go to court. It's a huge process. So everything is slow. The bureaucracy is slow. It is brutal. It is brutal, brutal, brutal. I will be honest. It does not work well in the United States either, but it is not this bad, especially like anybody who's gone to the DMV in the US knows that is not a fun experience. But it's not going to take you 9 months to get your driver's license in the US. There's no way. That would never happen. However, if you're an immigrant in the United States, the bureaucracy there is just as bad as it is for immigrants here. Okay, so I will say that. So if you're a US citizen, we didn't know. We never had to experience that. It's bad everywhere here. So in Spain, the bureaucracy is similarly bad. Also in Italy, it is similarly bad. It seems to be a little bit better in France. My cousin and my sister both live in France, and they have not had the same issues. But that's one thing that I really don't like here. Okay. And then this is now where I start getting controversial. The third thing that I don't like about living in Portugal is the way that the tides are turning toward immigrants. And this is controversial, and there are reasons that it is happening, and I do understand. I am not that person, even though it is like this also in the US. It's anti-immigrant right now. I am not a person who is anti-immigrant. I think that the US specifically, I've always called it a melting pot. And I think that different cultures and different people that live there are really making it a beautiful country. And I like having other people live there. And I'm not that kind of person that feels like, oh, they're stealing my job or whatever. As a matter of fact, I feel like, because I've known a lot of immigrants in the US, and I feel like they're not getting a fair shake because, just for example, I knew this one person that he was a doctor in his country, and because of the laws in the United States, he could not be a doctor in the United States and had to take a lower paying job. And that happens everywhere. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But when I first arrived here in Portugal, I always, and I still do, I like to talk to the Portuguese and ask, how do you feel about people from the US moving here? How do you feel about people from other countries moving here? And I was floored that everybody was so positive, and they would tell me all of these amazing things that were happening because of immigration. However, politically, the tides are turning here, and there is a political party, two in particular, that one more so than the other, that is very anti-immigration, taking a playbook from what's happening in the US, and people are getting angry here. And I have never had anybody be angry to my face about me being an immigrant here, but I have had a lot of people, not a lot, a few people online, because they have the protection of the screen, and people have been very angry. However, getting back to the point is that the huge immigration issues, and I was just talking to a Portuguese friend of mine during lunch about this, and I talked to my Portuguese teacher, who is Portuguese, about this a lot, is that the immigration issues were started because of the government here, the Portuguese government. Portugal had open borders, and because they needed immigrants and the immigrants were helping the economy, they were letting a lot of people in without knowing who a lot of people were. There wasn't heavy background checks, and more people arrived than was sustainable, really. And I'm not saying that the immigrants haven't driven up some costs. However, it's not just the fault of the immigrants at all. So from what I've seen, and again, from talking to my Portuguese friends, a lot of times the Portuguese are driving up costs as well. And this is happening because of Airbnbs, which I really think that there was for 5 minutes a moratorium on any new Airbnbs, and then it was overturned. Even when I moved here where I had to stay in Airbnbs or apartments from booking.com, the owners were Portuguese, and they are actually charging quite a bit for just even to stay one night. It's over 100 euros per night in Porto, and for temporary, for short-term rentals. And that is really driving up the cost of housing. It's a huge, huge issue. And obviously there are immigrants that are here or moving here that have a lot of money, not just from the US, from all countries. I'm not going to call out the other countries because that would be rude of me, but they are also driving up the costs because they are willing to pay more. This happens in the United States, and a lot of the rich Californians moved to other states and bought the most expensive houses on the blocks. And I used to be a real estate appraiser, so I know a little bit about how the market works. And this drove up the costs in places like Washington and Oregon, where rich Californians were moving to or did move to. And that is definitely happening somewhat here. However, I have also seen a lot of locals being guilty of this as well. So trying to make money, nothing wrong with that. Totally get that. But not charging what people can afford, what the Portuguese can afford specifically, it's heartbreaking. So my landlady, for example, only rents to Americans. She will not rent to any Portuguese, and she owns 4 apartments. And I understand, but I don't think it's fair. And so she doesn't inflate her rental prices, which is really good. She charges actually now less than market value, under market value. However, because she won't rent to a Portuguese person, that limits housing for the Portuguese, which is really, really awful, really awful. And I do have some friends that are owning, that have purchased and refurbished apartments that were just, I have one friend, he's refurbished 3 places himself and they were ruins. So I feel like that's a good thing because it's building up something that was, taking something historical and making it so that, there's more housing and people can live there, and it's positive. It's positive for the economy and for Portugal, and he is not inflating his rental prices if and when he does rent out his spaces. I have another friend who is an immigrant from France who is also renting out a small apartment and not inflating the prices. So I know that there are plenty of immigrants who do inflate prices. I don't like it. I don't own anything. I've never owned anything in my life. I've never owned an apartment, a house. I just never have. So I don't know what it would be like. I'm just speaking from the other side, from a renter's point of view. But that is not what I'm hating, or the third thing that I really don't like about living here. It's that the tides are turning in regards to how immigrants are perceived here and how we are treated here, and how, I think I should just end on that note, how we are perceived and treated here. The fourth thing that I don't like about living in Portugal is the high cost of living that did not exist when I got here. So the inflation, everything is more expensive. And so this plays into the last issue, obviously, but it doesn't have to do with the government, and it doesn't have to do with the people moving here as much as just pure inflation. So food prices are more. Now, I guess it does have to do with some of these things, because restaurants have to charge more because housing prices are more. But food is also more, so restaurants have to charge more, right, because of inflation. So just as an example, If you're going to buy a pizza here in Porto, it's about 25 euros for, and it's not even a medium pizza. It's between a small and a medium pizza. And I think that's a lot. I think 20 to 25 euros for a pizza that is just for one person is a lot of money. Aveiro, which is 40 minutes south, a large pizza that's enough for 2 people is 9 euros. So the inflation is really happening, especially around food and housing, in the major cities. So in Lisbon is the most expensive. The Algarve is, some places the Algarve, like Lagos, I would say is on par with Lisbon. It's quite expensive there to go out for food and to buy food. It's just more expensive. And then obviously Porto, because it's the second largest city. And so yes, food prices have definitely increased, and I don't like that. I don't like that for everybody, but I really don't like that for the Portuguese, because the minimum wage here is less than 1,000 euros a month. So it's not good. It's just not good. Okay, so are you ready for the 5th thing that I don't love about living in Portugal, which is the most controversial subject of them all, and that is the misogyny. Now, I have a lot to say about this, and I'm probably going to get a lot of angry comments. That's what happened when I talked about it on my Substack, and I have to say that I was silent for 3 years and did not talk about my experiences with the misogyny that I have found here, and I did not talk about the pretty negative things that have happened to me. I do need to start out by saying that although I have had some uncomfortable experiences and even some aggressive things happen, I haven't feared for my life. And that is very different from what happened to me back in the US, where I had some pretty scary incidents that I'm not going to go into, where I did fear for my life. I want to start out by saying that not all men here are misogynistic. Absolutely. I have some amazing Portuguese male friends. I know many lovely Portuguese men, but it is a lot more culturally misogynistic than I was led to believe, than I could have ever imagined, honestly. And when I posted about this on my Substack, I had a lot of men answering. Now, first of all, if you're a man, you can't know really what it's like to be a woman. There's just no way, unless you dress as a woman and go out as a woman and are perceived as a woman. Otherwise, you don't know what it's like. You might think you do, or you might have heard from your female friends, but you've never actually experienced it. So I had some really great responses from men on my Substack, and they were the men that knew me, that have interacted with me over the last several years that I've been on Substack, and they were so supportive and kind and understanding, and it was great. And then I had complete strangers, nobody who knew me, nobody who had ever interacted with me, and they were angry and dismissive and defensive, which tells me that I hit a nerve, and good. I'm glad. So I'm not here to hurt anybody's feelings, but I am here to talk about my truth. And on that note, these are my opinions and my experiences only. I would never say that these are the experiences of every woman here in Portugal, ever. I would never claim to know that, to know what other people's experiences are. I have, of course, talked to many other people in Portugal, and I know that some women have had similar experiences to me. I'm not going to go into all of them. We don't have time for that. I'm happy to if somebody's interested in another video, but again, this is extremely controversial, and it is not my intention to alienate people. It is my intention to let other women know what they may experience here. And I think that that's really important. I wish that someone had told me because it came as a shock. So what usually happens is that I am pushed out of the way on the sidewalks. So the men have the right of way. Men have the right of way everywhere. So they will go first. I will have to demur to a man and step out of the way, step to the side. The men, not all men, but the majority will enter the buses first, enter a building first. If it's me and a man entering into a building, I will have to stop and let him go first because they do not let me go first. And I've never ever had any male hold a door open for me. I'm not saying that that's expected or that a man should hold the door open for a woman, but where I come from in the United States, I hold the door open for people when I am the first to reach a door. I hold it open for people, whether it's a man or a woman or non-binary person. And that is what I've had happen in the United States as well, as people hold the door open for me too. So that's what I had expected, and that has never happened here. So I just want to mention that. And when I'm standing in line for something and I'm the next person in line, if there is a man that walks into the store or walks in, and most places here you have to take a number, but some places you do not. And when I'm somewhere where you do not, the man will cut in front of me and he will go first. And I could try to make a stink about it. I could try to say something and raise my voice, but it is not worth it. So I have learned to not say anything. It is not easy for me. I will just say that. However, if I got upset every single time it happened, I would spend a majority of my time upset. And also, it's really nothing that I can change. I can't change the culture here. So I think that that's really important for people to know. And then I just want to say also that I did get some comments about, well, you should try Italy. It's much, and these were comments from men, which I thought was pretty funny. You should try Italy or you should try Greece. Well, I've spent months in Italy and in Greece, and I've never had this happen in Italy. I should say in 1990, I was exiting a bus in Italy. This is 1990, and I stepped in front of an older gentleman, and by older I mean he was probably 80. And because I stepped in front of him, and as a man, he had the right of way in his mind and in that culture, and he punched me in the arm, and he punched me so hard I had a bruise. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen in other places, and I've never been physically accosted here, almost, but not. And again, that's a story where I upset a man here that was working, and he was upset for absolutely no reason, actually. And he thought my dog was pooing when she was not on some grass. And so he came over and tried to grab my phone out of my hand. He did grab my dog's leash, and we had a push and pull. He was trying to grab my dog, to take my dog. And I filmed him. And he started calling me some pretty offensive names. And I filmed the entire thing. And then I went to the owner of the building, and I showed him the video, and the guy got reprimanded and demoted, so as he should. And I was not the first woman that he had accosted. I've talked to other women that he had also been extremely aggressive toward. Did I fear for my life? No. Did I fear for my dog's safety? Yes. But again, I've had much worse happen to me in the U.S. So but I do want to mention that because I think that that's kind of an important thing to know about moving here, right? So stuff like that could happen. Now, since that occurrence in 1990 in Italy, I've been back to Italy many times. Nothing like that has ever happened. And then I've spent time in Greece, and I have never seen so much chivalry in my life, and this was recent. And men were holding doors open for me. They were waving for me to go first on the sidewalk. They were waving for me to go in front of them in lines. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that that's pretty important. And I also want to say, you know, I'm going to be 60 years old in under 6 months, and you know, for the angry young men that are calling me names and saying things, would you talk to your grandma that way? Because like I'm basically your grandma. So that's, yeah. But also I have a really thick skin, so I've been around the block, and you know, I am not going to hold my truth in order to make people happy and people that I don't even know. I don't think that that's fair. I think that it's more important for me to tell you guys what happens to me here. Now, a lot of it could be that I am single and solo, and I am a woman walking around by myself. But I was in the US too, and I didn't have that happen. But I don't have a man here next to me watching out for me. So yeah, I just want to, and I also am outside a lot because I do walk my dog. I explore the city quite a bit. And so again, these are just my experiences, and I want to end on a positive note, because even though that is the thing that I dislike, probably not the most, because the heater air conditioning thing is definitely number one for me, but it's pretty high on my list of things that I don't like about living here, but it is not a deal breaker. I still absolutely love living here. I wouldn't change it for anything. To end on a super positive note, I feel safer here than I've ever felt anywhere in my life. And remember, I have traveled throughout the United States in a van by myself for a year. I have traveled to many, many, many places in the world by myself. And I have never felt safer than I do in Portugal. I can walk around in my area. Now, I wouldn't do this downtown, but I can walk around in my area, which is close-ish to downtown, with my phone out at midnight, at 1 in the morning, at 2 in the morning. I've walked my dog. There are families out, there are kids playing, and I've never felt unsafe. You know, like somebody was going to rob me or be like, you know, over the top, physically violent, you know, maybe there's going to be some yelling and like I said, that other incident. But yeah, it's rare. That's also rare. That is my honest hate list. Want the full picture? Which I hope you do. Jump into the 5 things that I love about living here. It is the perfect counterpoint. Don't forget to subscribe and share this with someone who's considering moving here. See you soon.